Yep.
Dorsey. I'm sorry.
All right, other than, that's okay. Other than normal staff briefings, I had a Mason Transit Authority Board meeting today at 4 o'clock. What else? I have upcoming, I'm looking forward to going to the high school ribbon cutting and the Mountain View grade school ribbon cutting. I want to see those projects up close, so other than that, that's about it for me.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Nisco.
Outside our briefings and meetings, I attended a ribbon cutting for a new retail shop called the Poppy Shop downtown 401 West Railroad. Has little knickknacks in there, but you should check that out. That same night, I attended the Shelton High School Pride Night. On Friday the 6th, I met with the mayor to talk about the budget. And then I took a week off on vacation. And on the 16th, I was invited by the mayor yesterday to attend the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee meeting. Very interesting. And I also had a briefing on that day. And today I attended a ribbon cutting for Shelton Family Center or a meeting. Let's see, and we have a ribbon cutting tomorrow in Steamboat Island for Yurako's #2. And the State of Our Community event on Thursday.
Okay, thank you. Last couple of weeks, I met with constituents over several issues. We've had 2 LTAC meetings to decide how to fund out of our lodging tax receipts. We've had a couple budget committee, or at least one budget committee meeting, and I've had, as Councilmember Nisco, met with Councilmember Nisco and Councilmember Kranz to get them up to speed on some of the things that we talked about. Moving ahead, State of the Community tomorrow. And Thursday, thank you. I'm speaking with the Pioneer Kiwanis tomorrow. And then we have a briefing next week. So that's my weeks.
Mayor, can I also wanted to mention that I did tour a homeless encampment yesterday with our city manager and our chief of police. And staff is working on that to see what we can do about that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Peterson.
In addition to briefings and the budget meetings which were mentioned, we do have another budget meeting scheduled the end of this month on the 27th. I will be out of town during that committee meeting, but Mayor Rogers and Councilmember Schmidt will continue to meet with staff, particularly on utility funds, so we can continue to work on the 2020 budget. I had a handful of constituent meetings, calls and correspondence, and last week I had my Mason County opioid stakeholders meeting, which was held at the Squaxin Kitchen, and I think that is it for this time.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember McDowell.
Attended the after hours at Smoke and Moe's. I had my Lions Club meeting and briefing with Jeff this last week. Yurako's ribbon cutting tomorrow. Thursday, State of the Community lunch at the casino. The 24th, Mason County Board of Health meeting and the ribbon cutting for the schools, and several meetings with some constituents. I feel very honored when someone calls and asks if they can meet with me and they have a concern. And I don't always have a solution. Most of the time I don't have a solution, but it's nice to listen to them. So we're all open to anybody calling us and asking to meet with us on any issues they have. So anyway, I did that several times this last week, and that's my week.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Schmidt.
Outside of the budget committee meeting and normal briefings, had one constituent meeting and just wanted to pass along a shout out to the Shelton School District. Thank you for taking my kids back to school this year. It is a wonderful time, but I am thoroughly impressed with the construction projects and got to walk through Mountain View School, their open house about a week ago, and wow, what a difference this is going to make for the community in our school district. Very proud of that, and very thankful of staff for putting in the hard work in getting permits issued and occupancy ready to go for this year's school season. And that is it from my report.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we're going to turn over to Jeff for an introduction.
Real quickly, Mayor, I wanted to introduce Ken Gill. He is our new city engineer. He started about 2 weeks ago and is already diving into a lot of the engineering issues we have that he understands, that the rest of us for the most part, understand, but he definitely knows what he's doing. Ken wants to come up and say hello and introduce yourself to the council.
Thank you, council, for letting me come talk to you tonight. I'm excited and enthusiastic to be here. So I grew up just south of here in Kelso and cut my teeth at the local pulp mill there in Longview. So it's nice to be back in a timber town and get back to my roots. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, this will be the time for our first section of general public comments for items that are not on our business or action agenda. Anyone that would like to speak has turned in a comment card. Chief Moody's just brought them forward. So we ask you to step to the podium. There's a 3-minute time limit. Please identify yourself and state whether you're a city resident. And we'll start with the first comment.
Our first comment is from Denise Frank.
Good evening, council members. My name's Denise Frank, and I live in Shelton. I live at the top of what they refer to as Library Hill Trail. I'm here today to discuss concerns I have for my home and my family, our safety and well-being due to some activities that have started occurring over the last several months. Activities that are starting to increase in frequency. They're to the point of being out of control, causing us sometimes daily calls to the police department. Our family's not able to sleep at this time. We have grave concerns for our safety and our family's well-being right now. Over the last 2 months, we've seen a huge spike in crime in our neighborhood. There's been a lot of foot and vehicle traffic at all hours on our dead-end street. It's happening day and night. There's been increased litter, graffiti, needles, feces in the public walkway to the point that we no longer use it to go to the library. The people that now inhabit the hillside by the trail, they're trespassing on our properties at all hours on a daily basis. I mean, it's all the time. We have had 3 attempted home break-ins just this month while we were at home sleeping. We have noise disturbances occurring day and night, almost every night of the week. Car horns are honking, they're screaming, they're shouting. We've even heard gunshots. I work full-time, my children attend school full-time, and right now we can't even sleep at night. We're always awoken by the noise levels and cars parking in front of our home and on the side of our property. We've seen drug deals actually going down right in front of us. People carrying rock-like substances and packages up and down from the hill. We've actually seen people shooting up in the walking trail and sleeping in the walking trails. Public intoxication right in front of our home, people shouting, they're indecent. We've seen people riding bicycles naked in front of our children, swinging from our trees in our front yard at different hours of the day and night, people stripping in the street. We've had verbal threats of physical harm towards us when we ask them to leave and to move on. We've had, our cars broken into, our homes, our mailbox packages are disappearing. They're not showing up when they're expected. We've had propane tanks from our neighbors, car batteries, firewood's being stolen, garden equipment's being stolen out of our yards. We've had men trespassing in our yards, stalking. I have 2 young daughters, 9 and 10 years old. They've actually come onto our property, and our children were smart enough to run away when they saw them coming at them. They'll pace back and forth our yard. We've seen people wearing hoodies and full face masks, loading in the middle of the night, lawnmowers and power tools into vans and pickup trucks.
Denise, that's time. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Next is Daniel Wallace.
Good evening, council members. My name is Daniel Wallace. I live in Shelton on Birch Street. I'm here to express my concerns about the encampment near the City of Shelton's water tower on Birch Street, just off Library Hill Trail. This so-called encampment is far from that of a homeless encampment. In my opinion, it is an organized racketeering encampment. These people are involved in distribution of drugs, theft, sales of stolen property, harboring of fugitives, and I'm sure the list goes on and on. We, my family and I, have been and still are experiencing all of these actions on a daily basis. These people in this encampment are directly responsible for disrupting our family's quality of life. We have since felt it necessary to purchase security systems, handguns, building additional fences around our home, and are even in fear of leaving our home unattended for any length of time due to the previous and current trespassing and theft of our property. I have a duty to protect my family and our property. However, that duty is becoming more and more difficult with every day. Something must be done about this rapidly escalating situation sooner than later before it gets even further out of control. Perhaps a temporary closing of Library Hill Trail could be a starting point until a more permanent solution is made. We as a family and the community are nearly at our wits' end. I'm sure the Martin versus Boise ruling has created challenges for our city and its ability to act swiftly. However, this problem must be addressed now.
Thank you.
Nellie Peoples.
Hi, thank you, Council. My name is Nellie. Me and my husband Tyler Peoples just moved to Shelton, the beautiful city, 2.5 months ago when he accepted a job at Thurston County Sheriff's Office. We, as well as the people before us, Daniel Wallace and the other fine lady who spoke, live on Birch Street. In the short 2.5 months we've lived in the lovely city of Shelton, we have experienced more than 3 instances of people coming from the Library Hill Trail. As a resident, we should feel safe in our homes. My husband works 12 to 16 hours a week, keeping our community safe. Yet I'm home alone at night, and I do not feel safe. Both of our cars were vandalized one night, broken into. Our first week here, somebody ran into my breezeway and entered my home at 11 at night, carrying mace and a flashlight. Thank you to the Shelton Police who were there within minutes and escorted her off our property. The other night, while my husband was working and I'm home alone with our 6-year-old disabled son, somebody came through my breezeway. Our house is located far back off of Birch, so they had to travel a ways up our property to get through my breezeway. I called the police, and thankfully 2 deputies came out and immediately made sure we were safe. I want to see change, and I thank the council for listening, and I hope the council can take time to address these concerns. Many other neighbors on our street who are not able to be here tonight have experienced trespassers who are violating the trespass code. They are taking things off of our property, stealing things. Packages are being taken from a neighbor directly across me. Neighbor to this direction has had things stolen off their porch. My other neighbor had her wheelbarrow stolen. We've had things missing from our yard. We ask as city residents that the council takes time to address these concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tyler Peoples. No. Okay. Gary Walden.
I'm Gary Walden. I live up on Alder Street, just off of Birch. And not here lately, but I've had problems before, and my daughter calls my place Fort Walden. But in order to keep people from taking my materials and things in my yard and things like this, I've put in a system so that nobody can break into my house or get onto my property. And I think that it's high time that we did something about these people going around my house in a 3-wheeler at all hours of the night and raising hell up and down the streets with their cars. And I would to just address you people to see if we couldn't get something done about this encampment down at the end of the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Donna Walden.
I won't take very long because I'm kind of reiterating what's already been said.
I'm Donna Walden, Gary's wife. The thing that really irritates me is I don't feel safe in my home by myself. And my husband is gone a lot. He just got back from Alaska fishing. I had to have somebody come to my home and stay with me because I did not want to stay by myself. We've had a lot of significant things taken in the past, but I just bought brand new solar lights. So I have 3 of them in front of the house that are gone, that I ordered. And we've had a real expensive Seahawks flag taken. Last week, I think it was 3 gunshots at 1:15 or 1:10 in the morning. My husband's really hard of hearing, so I know it was close because it woke him up. And he thought somebody was doing something to his truck. It's not in the garage, it's outside. But everything that everybody has said, stands for us. I don't feel safe. I've been wanting to get a fence around the front of my yard. But I don't know. Safeway, another thing. I went to buy groceries the other day. Got out of my car. This guy kind of came at me when I parked and started using the F word. And then he looks at me and he says, "Effing people like you." And I went in and got the manager and I said, "There's a guy standing on the corner," which has happened before. So he said he's run him off. He's already ran him off 3 times. So when I went to get my groceries and go outside, he was still there. So I wasn't about to walk by him. He was nasty looking and it looked really mean. And so I had to get the manager again. So 2 guys went out with me. I says, "Just pretend like you're putting my groceries in my car." I didn't want the guy to think that I had turned him in. Then he was, So that's really all I have to say, except there's too many cars in the middle of the night, too many weird noises and people tearing around, and it's not safe in our community on the hill.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you.
David Johnston.
Okay.
Oh, I do care, that's why I'm here. Hi, my name's David Johnston. I live at the beginning of West Birch Street. I've lived there, my wife and I, and raised a family there. We have been there for over 40 years, and I was just made aware of this the other night, and that's why I'm at this meeting, is to have something done for my fellow neighbors. There's no way that people should be living like that in fear. So this, I know you gotta have a meeting about it and talk about it and discuss about it, but we can't be dragging our feet, or you guys can't be dragging your feet, is what I'm trying to say. Because the longer you wait, the more things, the way it sounds to me, it's not a real good deal. I haven't had no problems, but like I say, I'm at the start, I'm not down at the end. So as soon as you can get your heads together and get something done, the better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone with the last name of Hoops.
How would you feel if you couldn't let your kids go out and play in their yard? How would you feel if you had to chain up everything in your garage so nobody came and stole it? Broke into your house when you're not there. Sorry, I've been holding this in for weeks. I'd like to finish Denise's letter. She says, "Our neighbors closest to us are quite elderly. These are the last people before the tower. They're less than 100 yards away from this encampment. Our neighbors closest to us are quite elderly and were unable to attend tonight's meeting due to illness and debility. I worry that these same neighbors could potentially fall prey to this group of ill-intended individuals. This is beyond a homeless issue with these young people aren't just looking for a place to sleep. They're breaking laws, preying upon and bullying the people who live there, creating an anarchy in our neighborhood. I don't know what the solution is. Maybe you could consider closing the trail, relocating this camp out of a residential area to an area where the impact is not so severe. At this point, I want to sell our home and leave my career here in Shelton just so I can sleep at night and our girls can play safely outside. There's a convicted felon that the police are looking for that has 5 felony warrants. They can't find him. He keeps eluding them and has said he'll kill any cop that tries to arrest him. That's the guy that walked into their yard with 2 girls under the age of 11 trying to feed their chickens. Is that what you guys want in your neighborhood? Because we don't want it in our neighborhood either. I live in a family home. My family purchased it in 1969. Never had this problem. Never afraid to walk from my house to my garage when it's dark. The police that came said they've shattered the last quiet area in Shelton because we never had to come up here. They're not just looking for a place to sleep. You know, I am under the impression that part of the statute of this whole they can sleep anywhere they want to is that they have an obligation to call in and check for beds in our homeless areas. And I will guarantee you not one of those people have called in, not one, because they've got it made down there. They're defecating, they're littering, they're causing a rodent problem to exist. The sanitation department has brought garbage bags for them to fill up. It's out of control and it's ridiculous. And if you don't want it in your neighborhood, I hope you'll do what you can to keep it out of ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Pardon me, before you leave the podium, would you mind giving us your name?
Kay Hoops.
Thank you so much.
Kay.
And I have a letter, I don't know who I give it to, from one of the neighbors that wasn't able to.
Thank you very much.
Oh, can I say one more thing? If the path gets closed off that goes down, they're gonna circumvent that and they're gonna come right along the bank, the back of my house, where there's no protection at all.
Thank you.
Someone with the last name of, it looks like Berg.
Sir, please, and we come state your full name so we know who you are.
Hi, my name is Ken Berg. I live up in this same neighborhood. My wife and I moved there about 5 years ago. It's, for the last 4.5 or more than that, it's been a really nice place. I've got to know all my neighbors. In the summertime, the kids are out playing basketball, they're riding but bicycles. It's just a really nice, family-oriented neighborhood. Quiet, but enough noise from the kids playing and screeching, and it makes it nice. It's livable. For the last, I guess I'd say a little over a month, it's not the same neighborhood. You don't have the kids playing in the streets anymore. There's no more basketball. There's no more riding bicycles. If you do see a kid riding a bicycle, especially if it gets to be later in the evening, you really watch them close because you don't know who's walking down the street that could put that little kid in danger. And that's what we keep an eye out for. The people used to be friendly. You'd walk along, walking our dogs, and you'd talk about gardening, you'd talk about the weather, you'd talk about the road being built going down Olympic Highway, whatever. And it was just general, nice conversation. Now it's about, did you hear so-and-so had something stolen? Did you hear about the naked guy? Did you hear the gunshots? Did you see that guy's walking over there? Did you see the drug buys? And it's just happened recently since this encampment of Sheltonites, wherever, are living by the water tank. So our life has changed from something really nice, I feel, to something that's just put everybody on edge. It's not a fun place to live. If I had to do over again, and I heard about this, say if I was moving in here now and came to this meeting, oh, I'm gonna move to Shelton, and I heard about this, nah, I'm not living here. So anyway, our lives have really been affected by this, and they'll continue to be affected, and I'd like for something to be done, and I don't know what it is, to bring it back so we can be this big, happy neighborhood that we used to be, that so many people have talked about. So I hope somebody can come up with an answer and can do something for us. That's all I've got to say, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was the last person signed up, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you again for your comments. City Manager Knighton, would you like to make a few statements?
Sure. We understand the issues specifically in this area. We are currently evaluating what we can and can't do legally to make sure, or try to return this neighborhood to as it's been described previously before the issue. In the last couple of weeks, we've taken our work crews up there to address some of the trash issues around the area, and handed out garbage bags to try to keep the area as clean as possible. It works sometimes. Our patrol teams have met with residents in the neighborhood and spoken to them about some of their concerns. And we walked the area yesterday, I believe, and spoke with a resident to discuss some of the concerns there. And we have a couple of options that we're evaluating to try to stay within the legal constraints that we have to deal with when dealing with this issue. But we are focused on it and we are working on it to try to do the best we can.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. Okay, we have a presentation from the Forest Festival.
If I may,
oh.
one quick thing. I just want to say thank you to city staff. We are officially now caught up on our minutes.
Oh.
Thank you very much for all your hard work. I didn't want that to go unnoticed.
I appreciate that. Thought about that. Thank you all for coming
Thank
tonight.
you, guys.
Very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be thanking you next time.
Night, Gary. All yours, Mick.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I'm Mick Sprowski, the president of the Mason County Forest Festival. Our 2019 Forest Festival was a great, successful event again. This is our LTAC report. You have the written report in front of you. This money is it's a big part of our budget. It works out to be about this year's grant was about 16% of our overall budget. You know, what that's used for our Forest Festival operations, you know, the logging show, largely just the logging show itself. What this does, though, it frees up other monies to be spent on travel for our float. Some of it supports scholarships, the funding of, you know, some of the repairs of the float, et cetera. So our attendance moving on to the event itself, the attendance was great this year. For all of our events, the fun run was well attended. The parade we estimated about 8,000 people attended the parade with over 80 entries. I don't have a number for the an estimated number for the logging show, but I know it was the best attended yet. We continue to increase our bleacher size and increase our infield and managed to fill that up. The weather, of course, helps with that, and then having still, as a part of this, it brings in additional people. Some of our competitors came from as far away as West Virginia, Michigan. Steel staff came from South Carolina and New Hampshire and places in between. So our car show had 405 entries, with 65% of those out of the Shelton area. So that's as Commissioner Anisco knows, that it was packed up there. We had every space possible filled with cars. It's our estimate that we had 180 rooms filled, 180 hotel rooms filled for this event. And I'd like to highlight that our Forest Festival court gets out and travels around Western Washington, and they attended Swim Irrigation Festival, Port Townsend Roadie Festival, the Forks 4th of July Parade, Port Orchard Fathoms of Fun, the McCleary Bear Festival, Lake Fair in Olympia, and then Sea Fair in Seattle. The court they're basically ambassadors from Mason County, from Shelton, out sharing their experiences here at home and learning from those where they go to visit. So, our upcoming event, the 2020 event, is going to be from May 28th through the 31st, with the main event on May 30th. We're looking forward to that, and I want to thank you guys for all your support, the city staff for their support, Public Works, the Parks Department, everything you do to help us put on a great event.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
Welcome.
Any questions?
Any questions I can answer?
Great show.
That's great. And still is coming back?
Yes, they are. They've moved their national event to Salem, Oregon. So with that move, they're going to leave us in place one more year.
And Mick, are you looking for volunteers again for?
Yes, we are always looking for volunteers. And it's volunteers at all levels. I mean, anybody might be interested in, just give us a shout. We have some advertisements out on Facebook. My phone number's on our webpage. If you want to give me a call, that'd be great. So,
thanks very much.
Thank you.
And I just want to commend you. This Forest Festival is one thing that makes Shelton, and I really appreciate all the efforts, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll adjourn out of our regular meeting and move into our public hearing on the 2020 budget. So Finance Director Aaron B. Miller has a presentation for us.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. This is the first public hearing on the city's 2020 budget. Did I do that, or did you do that, Chuck? I did?
Chuck did it.
Was it good of me? Well, that's what I did last time. Now I'm paranoid. I'm gonna do it again. Rollerball's not doing anything either. Am I turned on? I'll give you the thumbs up. So the 2020 budget is being built using realistic revenue assumptions and then matching the expenditures to that level. We want to make sure that budgeting decisions are being made with an eye toward ongoing resources to fund operation. One-time only resources should fund one-time only type of expenses. And the budget is being built using an incremental budget process this year. I will say that it has been a challenging budget process again. Currently, our expenses are over our revenues, in the general fund in particular, and the city manager is contemplating budget decisions, and will be using the council strategic goals to guide those decisions moving forward. And we will present to you a balanced budget moving forward. Government fund structure, just wanted to put this in here. The city does utilize all these different types of funds, the general fund, special revenue funds, debt funds, capital, as well as proprietary funds, enterprise, and internal service funds. And so all of those are being budgeted right now. Our general budget assumptions. Medical increases, we're currently having them increase at 6%. Dental increases 4% or 5%, depending on the dental plan. The public employers retirement system rate is nearly 13%. That is set by the state. The cost of living adjustment is incorporated into the budget right now is 3%. It looks like it came in more at 2.7, so we'll make that adjustment. Hasn't been done yet. Non-labor expenses will increase by that same CPI, except where they are contracted and known. The implicit price deflator is, we're assuming it will be greater than 1%, and it has turned out to be 1%. That's the measure for property tax. It's 1% or the IPD, whichever is greater. And the council will approve the updated non-represented salary scale. Positions by fund, I'm not going to go through this in great detail. Suffice it to say, in the general fund, they are flat. In the other governmental funds, they are flat, and we have one additional position in our utility funds at this point in time. General fund revenues, we are projecting the percent change on the left-hand side, let me say, our revenues by category. They're rolled up, and it's showing the difference between our 2019 estimate and our 2020 working, and for that, we're just calling it working budget at this point. Taxes are basically flat, just a little bit down, and if you look to the right, on the right-hand side of that chart, that details the taxes a little bit more in detail. So you can see the B&O tax right now, it's a 2% increase. Utility taxes non-city, that's phone, natural gas, electricity, stuff like that, is of about 1.3%. Utility tax on city, water, sewer is currently at 1%. Flat throughout. Property tax, again, 1.3, that's the 1% increase plus an estimate on new construction at this point in time. And you can see that our retail sales and use tax, we are showing that to be less by about 3% at this point in time for next year. Back on the other left-hand side, intergovernmental revenues is down by 38%. That is due to the $273,000 grant that we got for the library. Fines and penalties are down about 8%. It's not a big category, but we did receive a large drug seizure from the county this year. Miscellaneous revenue, those are mostly donations. We don't budget for donations as they come in. We'll put them in there, but we did have some donations this year, so they're down. And other financing sources, it looks like a big number. We budgeted $4,000 for sale of asset last year, so we're not doing that right now, but it looks big as a percentage, but it's not necessarily big as a dollar value.
Aaron, could you just explain your logic why you're estimating sales tax could potentially go down?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Two real reasons. One, with all of the construction that has been taking place, there's been a lot of sales tax for construction type of activities. Some of those are starting to finish up now, and if memory serves, about 24% of our sales tax that we've collected so far this year is on construction activities. So as that returns back to maybe normal levels, we're putting the sales tax down back in line, more in line with the 2017, 2018 sales tax revenue rather than the 2019, and we're continuing to look at that throughout. Next steps, there is another budget committee scheduled to meet on the 27th. We are continuing to finalize revenue and expenditure assumptions. The city manager will make budget decisions by mid-September and propose a balanced budget to council. Council will consider the proposed budget really through November, and we're looking for to be able to adopt that budget in December. And with that, it's opportunity for public comment, unless there are any questions I can answer first.
Questions from council for Aaron or for Jeff? Councilmember Schmidt.
Just a comment to the council. Last year, when we were experiencing the mama bear and papa bear situations, the ship was righted, and we were under an understanding that the ongoing costs of operating the city are going to continue to grow slower than our economic development and revenues in the city. This should not be a surprise to any of us. Unfortunately, the situation is presenting itself again this year, and will likely next year and the year after that, so, and on into the future. we need to really look at where we're going. We need to really make sure that when we are crafting priorities, when we're sitting in strategy meetings and other discussions, that we're keeping that in the forefront of our minds. We're working hard with, staff is working incredibly hard to make it all happen with the bare bones that they possibly can. I'm a firm believer that there is not anything else that we can squeak out to make this right. We have some significant gaps to fill, and we have to put our collective brains together, and both with our community networks and whatever else we have. I don't know, bake sales and other things.
Fill the boot.
Fill the boot, whatever. But that's got to start now. We have to start working on that collectively as a group as we roll into 2020, so we can be looking at those revenue sources for 2021 and beyond. So I ask for your help and appreciation for the work that staff is doing right now to get us back on the straight and narrow for this next year. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll open it up. Thanks, Aaron. You bet. Public comment on the budget.
I don't have anyone signed up, Mayor.
Okay, no one signed up for comment. So we'll close our public hearing on the budget and resume our regular meeting. And we'll move into our business agenda. We have a revised ILA with Mason County. Mark Ziegler will discuss that.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. If you'll remember, back in February of 2019, quite a while ago, the council approved an interlocal agreement with Mason County regarding cooperative services for affordable housing and homeless services, and designated city council member to serve on the advisory board that's associated with managing that. Well, a funding mechanism was approved through House Bill 1406 that authorized local governments since that time of the agreement with the ILA with Mason County to essentially have a part of the sales and use tax, state sales and use tax, be funded to local governments to address, make sure I've got it right, affordable and supportive housing. So that amount is 0.0073%, which would equate to about $18,000 currently in the city of Shelton. That $18,000, in order to manage that internally, would be a burden, if not a significant task within the city. And we have the ILA in place. We have the advisory committee in place that are serving to meet these needs for homeless and affordable housing already with the county. This ILA would identify that the city would forego collecting those funds and allow the county to collect those. So the $18,000 would be collected by the county, and the county would subsequently spend those funds within the city of Shelton for services for affordable and homeless services within the city. Staff feels like this is a good compromise. We've discussed this with county staff, attended a county commissioners briefing session. They gave their blessing. Prosecuting attorney at Mason County has reviewed it, as well as our own city attorney before tonight. So take your questions.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions for Mark? Okay, I failed to ask Donna, are there any public comments on any of the business?
There isn't.
Okay. Okay, nothing from council, so do we agree to move this forward to our business meeting October 1st? Yes. Okay, all right, thank you. Next.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, I just wanted to say this is an example of the partnerships with the county that we're trying to form in order to provide more efficient delivery of services to everyone, all citizens as part of the community. But this is the first of hopefully many partnerships that we'll be able to work with our other legislative bodies with.
Okay, sounds good, Jeff. Thank you. Okay, back to Mark on acquisition of park property.
Right, I'm not, grab the clicker here.
Good luck to you.
Perhaps third time she'll be the charm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Or the screen fall off.
If it has to do with technology, I might need that luck. Thank you, council member, mayor, council members. And again, I'm here to dredge up briefings from the past. A year ago, in fact, I was in front of the council briefing you on the opportunity to acquire 2 parcels, one within the city limits and one just on the outskirts of the city limits, that would add to our park inventory. These properties are referred to as the Mankey and Angle properties. I'm bringing forward to you tonight just the Angle properties, as we have documents that are ready to be executed with your approval. I'd like to point out or recognize Lawrence Reeves with Capital Land Trust is here tonight, and he can answer any questions, as they are the current owner of what is referred to as the Angle property. About 14 acres off Bayview Avenue, and the wooded hillside that goes down the slope to towards Goldsboro Creek to the north. Capital Land Trust obtained this through a donation with the Angle family within the last year. Has approached the city for donation. We got a map, Chuck? Okay. For donation to the city for use as open space, habitat, trails, conservation. These are important resources to our community, specifically to the health of Goldsboro Creek, and the only improving coho run within South Sound, native coho run within South Sound. There's current social trails within that property that are quite significant and would provide a great opportunity for recreation needs in our community. From back in the mid-1990s, we have heard from our residents that nature trails, walking trails are a high priority with our community, and certainly not only the Angle property, but in combination with the Mankey property, these would help serve that purpose. We have a map up on the screen. You'll see the Angle property is on the top right, bordered in orange. It's the property you see that's about 14 acres. The city owns a small piece kind of between on Goldsboro Creek as well, that's bordered in orange and yellow and green, if you see right in Goldsboro Creek, right in the center on the top of the screen. So this gives reference Bayview Avenue, Holly Drive, Hawthorne is the general vicinity. Oh, there we go. This shows the street frontage on Bayview, about 330 lineal feet along Bayview. To the north is the access to the property. This shows kind of entrance trail, as you see, fairly well used, informally, I guess, over the years by the community and the neighborhood. But these are opportunities to enhance and provide not only the trails, but also some environmental education on how the property works in conjunction with Goldsboro Creek. This just is another perspective up in the trees, shows you some of the mature vegetation trees on the property and some of the unique opportunities that we have within the city that would be available to our residents. Again, showing part of the trail moving down the slope a bit towards Goldsboro Creek and what it looks like currently. Another perspective. And again, when it moves back into the tree line a bit, kind of on the upper portion of the Angle property. If considering the donation of this property, there is a covenant on that prohibits active recreation or building within the property. So this would be a passive recreation area, could be used for trails, walking, public access such as that, but no no ball fields, no parking lots, any of those type of infrastructure improvements would be allowed per the covenant on this property. I think that's the primary task. You've got a copy of the quitclaim deed and the covenants in your packets for review if you have any questions on that, or would like some more information from Capital Land Trust and Lawrence, who's here tonight. We're open for questions.
Okay, questions for Mark?
Just what would you anticipate maintenance issues over there cost yearly?
We haven't identified exactly what it's gonna take. It's, it certainly is less than active recreation areas. Ball fields, playgrounds are significant maintenance tasks and costs. So these would be walking the trails, shoring it up, picking up some garbage, managing any activity that, that you wouldn't want to take place within those areas. We can quantify that based on what we do at the Huff and Puff Trail, which is, somewhere around 100 hours a year in staff time.
Shelton has some little gems all over the place that are perfect places for parks for this community, and this is one of them.
Deputy Mayor Peterson?
Mark, could you just speak a little bit to how this dovetails with the Recreation and Parks Plan that you've been working through, and if there are any other
Absolutely.
Opportunities there?
Yeah, thank you. One thing I did not mention is the Citizens Advisory Committee, Parks and Recreation Citizens Advisory Committee has made a unanimous recommendation that would present this to the council for approval. So we're working through the Parks, Recreation, Open Space and Trails Plan. The public survey timeframe just ended at the beginning of the month. We don't have the full tabulation of those surveys. What we did see before it closed at the first of the month was those responses holding very true to what we've seen from the mid-90s, from the 1996 plan all the way through the 2009 plan. Trails, nature trails, walking, biking trails, and water access were the top priorities along with neighborhood parks. So this certainly dovetails into those top priorities, at least as far as the trail element.
Other questions?
And I think you spoke to last time, but any liability concerns with acquiring this property?
There's no record of development on the property in our records previously. I can maybe ask Lawrence if any environmental assessment was done on their end on acquisition, but.
We didn't do, customarily, we do a phase one environmental assessment. We didn't in this case. We did walk the property multiple times, talked with the landowners, and we felt comfortable with the condition of the property from a, hazardous waste standpoint, yeah.
It's quite evident walking the property, as well as through our internal records, that certainly there wasn't significant construction done on site. And certainly, we wouldn't propose any work that would disturb the site as well. Certainly that doesn't forego potential down the road, but we don't see going in and disturbing the site to create some of those impacts that you might see through the environmental concerns.
Another angle on liability.
Yeah.
That ground is significantly different than Huff and Puff. Some of it's pretty steep.
Yeah.
Do we, on existing trails, I haven't been on all of them, but is there any issue with additional liability from people hiking the trails, and the same on the Mankey property eventually?
So one thing we have is a recreational lands immunity statute. I bet Kathleen was just gonna mention that. So recreational lands immunity statute allows local governments to provide recreational amenities, particularly if you're not charging a fee. So if you're not charging a fee, you're allowing them on your property to recreate. You don't have a latent defect within that property. I'm sure there's probably been examples through the court, but you certainly have some reasonable immunity to that. So if we haven't, if we know of an issue, if we dig a hole and leave it open, that it's not signed and create warnings, we certainly have a liability in that instance. If it's something that nature creates, I think maybe Kathleen can speak to that more appropriately.
Yeah, if you're making recreational land available for use by the public without charging a fee, then you have an immunity for injuries that occur on the land, unless there's an artificial condition, so like a man-made condition that's hidden, it can't be really easily seen. If it's a natural condition and/or is something that can be seen by anyone seeking to hike the trail, for example, then you're not going to have liability.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. And question on the covenants, this might be for Lawrence. They're fairly restrictive, I understand that, but I mean, just for normal trail maintenance, I assume that to bring in a couple wheelbarrows of gravel or bark per the covenants, that would not be allowed without permission. I'm assuming that type management would be allowed at some level.
Correct, yeah. Under the covenants, we're allowed to maintain those elements, those recreational elements to reasonable and safe conditions.
Okay. And then another question on covenants for the future, will there be any of these covenants on the Mankey property, or do we know yet?
At this point, there is proposed covenants. We certainly have some more flexibility in that at this time. Obviously, it's not in front of you, but we are discussing the opportunity to create a neighborhood park within that property that would provide more active recreation opportunities, because it is an area lacking within our city for a neighborhood park. Our current standard is a neighborhood park within a half-mile radius of all residents. So we've identified an area at the top of Turner, just off the hill, that is already logged. It's I guess, less impact to put in a play structure, some picnic facilities, maybe a small parking lot, restroom if necessary in the future. So that is right now within the draft covenant, and you'll see that when we bring it at a later date.
Thanks, Mark. Anything else, Mark?
No.
Okay, agree to move this forward to October 1st?
Yes.
All right. Next, we're to Craig to share us amendment with the SCADA services contract.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Public Works is asking for an amendment to our SCADA services contract with Parametrics. With the previous event that we had, the emergency event, we did go over the identified amounts per the tasks for SCADA services for water and sewer. So with doing that amendment to increase those levels, we also identified wanting to also push out the expiration date for another year to December 31st of 2020. The amounts of increase would be an additional $40,000 for tasks in the water department and an additional $80,000 in the sewer department within the next, to the end of the expiration date of 2020. Certainly be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Greg. Questions for Greg? Seeing none? Right?
Nope.
Agree to move it forward to October 1st? All right, thanks, Greg.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have no action agenda tonight, so next is our general public comment 2.
And I don't have anyone signed up, Mayor.
Okay, thanks, Donna. So we're to our city manager, Jeff Knighton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. A couple things I wanted to mention tonight. First, I want to recognize our police chief, Chief Moody, for being appointed to as a hearing panel member for the Criminal Justice Training Commission. I think it's important to recognize him stepping up to serve not only Shelton, but the wider Washington community. Secondly, I don't want to dwell too long on that because I'm sure he's back there shaking his head. Second, our finance director, Aaron B. Miller, had to leave right after the presentation because he's headed over to Yakima. He was invited to present to the Washington State Financial Officers Association on some topic. I'm not sure what those guys talk about, but they wanted him to be there to recognize his expertise. Last, wanted to mention that we will be having our Spotlight Shelton celebration on October 30th. The informative presentation on October 30th about past successes and construction activity that we've had in 2019 and looking forward to the future in 2020, with the major projects that are on the agenda to move forward the next year. And a celebration of the Community Civic Center. We'll be paying the Civic Center off in November, and I believe there was a mention of a 7-layer chocolate cake at one point. Not sure if we'll have that, but we will have cookies and water and coffee and that kind of thing, so
We
people.
could burn the mortgage.
You know, just as an aside, I found out they don't give you the paper anymore. It's all electronic. I was pretty
Burn a
upset.
computer.
But that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, anything for Jeff tonight? Okay, seeing none, I guess you're off the hook. Our next meeting will be.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Items for new discussion.
I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Councilmember?
Sorry, I don't usually talk a whole lot. I don't know about everybody else, but I can't stop thinking about that neighborhood up there by the water tank. And I would like to have some kind of solution tonight, temporary solution to this problem. Whether we have to close that trail and secure that property as best we can. Maybe make a budget modification for 2 more officers to hang out there dusk till dawn for 2 weeks. I think we need to do something tonight about this problem. I know we have these problems all over town. This seems extreme to me. I think we need to talk about it and come up with a solution tonight. And I'd like to hear what everybody else thinks.
So is that a motion to add that to the agenda?
I would, it's new, items for new discussion, do we need to make a motion to add that to the agenda?
Yeah.
I make a motion to add to the agenda that we talk about Birch Street.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Eric.
I too have been, most of the rest of the meeting tonight has been kind of a blur to me. I personally know some of these people. That's my hill up there too, and I had no idea this was going on up on Mountain View. I had no idea till tonight. And I think we need to, I wrote a little note here, it says we cannot wait any longer to do something. And I wrote another note that says, you know, is it possible, and this is for Chief and Jeff, to send a cop by there, you know, hourly, 2 hours, 5 hours, I don't know, make more visits to start with.
I certainly.
Those people certainly don't feel safe.
I certainly think that's something that we can do, at least set a number of stops per shift or something like that.
I know we're short of police too, so I know it's tough. But,
I mean, we have reservists out there, don't we, Chief Moody?
We have reserve police officers that are not level 1 reserves, which means they cannot operate on their own.
One of the other recommendations we heard tonight from the citizens was asking us to close the trail. Could someone speak to what our options are there and what the implications of that might be, so we could consider that if it is feasible?
Sure. We, when we took our visit on the ground yesterday, that's definitely something that we discussed and are working through the logistics of doing something like that and how it would affect the rest of the community. Anecdotally, we've heard stories of, you know, people taking the trail to go to the library, those kind of things, and we don't want to dissuade people, obviously, from doing that and using the trail, but we're mitigating factors for people that probably, or would, makes it difficult for the neighborhood using that trail. So there's pluses and minuses, and finding a balance point is what we have been doing most of the day today, and I'm sure tomorrow. So being able to answer that question tonight in a public forum is not something I'm necessarily comfortable with.
Yeah. But closing the, can I go? Closing the trail, is that really gonna, what I'm hearing then is these people are walking up the trail to go to this encampment. I'm hearing tonight that they're going up and down the street up on top.
I
That's
think-
what I've been hearing.
Yeah, I think we have clear direction from the council to address this problem specifically, and how we go about doing that is something that the chief and I can discuss along with other staff members on how to actually accomplish the direction the council wants us to go.
And could I just ask as a follow-up, once decisions are made about what actionable items may take place, if you would please make a special point to get that out to the council members, and I would expect we would communicate that with the folks in that area as you have been doing along the way. I understand this is an ongoing concern, it sounds like, and so making sure that we're in front of the communications on this and that we can offer whatever support we are able to as council and as staff to that neighborhood is something that is a priority for me.
Once we come up with a plan of action that fits the circumstances and the legal requirements, we will certainly share that with council. And we have a letter developed not specifically for this issue, but for people that come address their concerns for council, that we will be sending to the people on Birch Street, and I'm sure we'll contact them as well.
A question probably for Chief. It seemed like the comments said it had changed significantly recently. Do we know of any events or any whatever that caused that?
I would hate to just anecdotally give you that it's caused by that encampment. And when I talked to people that were living up in that little encampment area, the one I talked to said there wasn't as many people living up there just 3 months ago as there is currently. And when I talked to, in fact, some of the folks that were here tonight, I talked to them earlier this week and last week. It's not only that group of people. It's similar to other areas in this city where we say it's the homeless people. Sometimes it's an attractive nuisance is what we call it. So if there's a group of people hanging out in that area, some of them may in fact be homeless, but does that then cause others to hang out in that area? This is an area that's, if you've never been there, it's over and down, and it's not really a main street to where it's easily visible. And so some of these houses are on that end of that street. And when I talked to them, it was a lot of comings and goings up and down the hill. It wasn't just strictly coming up the hill, and it wasn't just strictly going down the hill. And it was party goers in the water towers as well as that down in the encampment. That being said, they also mentioned to me that we don't like to call you so much because it's a problem if we keep calling you. And we reiterated to them, that's the way I know something's happening up here was when you call us. And I understand the frustrations with calling and thinking, okay, it's not that big a deal, or it is or it isn't. And I appreciate them tonight saying that we were there to help them when we needed to. But I would encourage again, if we don't call when these little things happen, they become the bigger things. But like I said, city manager and Councilman Oniska walked it with me, and they can describe what they saw out there. We sent Jerry's crew from community service to go out there and try and do some cleanup and mitigation of it. There are options before you of things to do. I'm going to address the officer part of this. I'm 3 officers down at the moment. Frankly, I don't have the officers to put up there 24/7. Even if I offered them overtime, they wouldn't take it. They're working overtime now. And frankly, there's a point where the burnout levels in, and there's, I could tell them, look, I could offer you 12 hours overtime to go sit over there in a car and make sure nobody comes up and down the street, but that's really not a feasible option. That may stop it for tonight. But again, legally, they can't just stop people walking up and down a public street.
I just think that if there was an officer sitting up there dusk till dawn, they might find a new place to go.
That is also an answer, yes.
Is there a way that you could partner with some county officers? Is that possible? Is that legal?
It's always possible, absolutely. I haven't talked to the sheriff expressly about this, but I can tell you he's in a similar situation.
Yeah. Well,
Councilmember Schmidt?
I'm glad we're having this discussion, to be honest, and I'll be 100% honest too, that I share the same emotion and sentiments that Councilmember Onisco does, and all the people who sit in the audience and who came to talk to us. I appreciate them coming to talk to us. I think the thing for the council to learn and to understand and to come to grips with, shuffling homeless people around the city doesn't solve the issue, right? Sending a cop up and
no.
asking law enforcement presence doesn't solve the issue. And trust me, I wish it could be as simple as pay an officer overtime to sit there and deter, right? The long-term answer is that we need to understand why they're there, why we have the issue that we have, and then build the trust with that group. Because again, you can't just go grab people and force them into treatment, force them into housing. That is partially also behind some of the issues that we're seeing with the Martin v. Boise decision and all these other legislative sort of ties that we have to being able to do things in the community. It's because that's not necessarily the right approach. The right approach, we need to understand first what we're dealing with, what services we can connect them with, and again, but that starts with a foundation of trust with that community as well. Again, I struggle with move them around, kick them out, pick them up, pack them up, move them here and there. It's somebody else's problem. You're moving it back and forth, and you're just playing a game. And just look at downtown Olympia.
Well, I certainly wasn't suggesting that.
Oh no, it's tough because it's, well, what do you do now, right? What do you do today? I'm right there with you. What do we do today? And I'm beating my head against the wall.
I don't think we're dealing with the homeless issue. I think we're dealing with thugs. People who try to bust in somebody's house when they're home. I think this is bigger than just a little homeless camp. This is what they said. This is a.
Understand that a lot of the problems that they're facing are dealing with people who are in need of assistance for treatment purposes. Generally, the comments they've made to us, or the people we've contacted up there, are not just strong-arm robbers running into there to terrorize somebody. If there's somebody under the influence of something that has caused them to have that reaction. I'm not saying that I'm not trying to categorize them into what, but I'm telling you that a good portion of the crimes that they're talking about are people who are in need of some type of addiction service and have some type of substance abuse issue going on. The behavior that they describe, the things that they describe are 100% into that category.
The challenge with that is the stigma around building or providing, using public funds to provide those services, right? We've had this conversation kind of as a group, you know. We can't have people who are under the influence, living in this community. We need to have a clean and sober, or whatever that is. We create those barriers, but then we end up dealing with these problems where we've now created I've said it before, we've pitted groups of homeless people against each other for housing because they are suffering from addiction or mental health or other legal issues potentially. And now those services that are going to be built and created aren't going to be able to serve them. And, you know, again, I want to make sure with whatever we do, with whatever funds we spend in the city, that we're actually focusing it on the people that we're dealing with in the city.
So these are some of the things that we've discussed at length in the public health groups and opiate stakeholders group and other things. I do know that that group has made a significant effort to provide a more robust detail of services that are available and opportunities to navigate that. So I would encourage perhaps reach out to Abe Gardner, someone at Mason County Public Health, and perhaps they may have some services and some options in place that we could add to whatever decisions are made at the city level, because being the only incorporated city, we have a very unique circumstance in and of itself, and an understanding that this is not necessarily something that is, while it's happening within city property, affects the larger community. So if I could make that ask to reach out to public health and see if there's any partnership or available resources there, I would appreciate that.
Sure.
Like any of the issues we're facing, this is a multi-pronged problem. It is not just the addiction problem, it's not just the mental health problem. It does have a criminal element problem to it. It's all, there's not gonna be one answer to walk in there and fix it all. I wish that, trust me, if there was, I would be on it in a heartbeat. If you told me I could have 50 cops tomorrow and solve this problem, I would do it. But I don't think that's the reality. There is the criminal part of it, there is the lack of jail space that contributes to that and all those things. There is the mental health issues we're dealing with and the addiction issues, so I think they're all in combination. And so there are people out there that just need to go to jail. And then again, there are people who we need to figure out how to house them, how to treat them, all of those things.
I have a question. If this was a stick house and there was constant criminal activity out of that house, we have some rules that we can deal with that, even though it takes a while.
Well,
Do those same rules apply to homeless or a camp on public property?
I can give you an example, Stevens Street. How long has those neighbors come in here and have those discussions with us? This is some of the discussions we were having. Frankly, the neighbors, some of them are here because our officers have talked to them and said, here's what we can do, here's what we can't do. And they encouraged them to come and talk. I mean, frankly, our officers said, go talk to the council. Maybe we can have this conversation. It wasn't something that, because when I brought it up to the officers, they said, we told them to. And I said, that's great. That's what it's for. But those are the things that the council will have to make guiding decisions on in the future regarding policies and city ordinances. I mentioned attractive nuisance. That's a term I brought from a prior life where that's what we use for houses and businesses. If we had this many calls of this type of nature and we found out that your residence or business was that attractive nuisance causing those, then there could be penalties for that. Again, these are tough decisions that the council will have to make on some priority level of where to guide us.
But what makes those a lot easier if the owner is not the person in the house, correct?
No.
The owner can kick them out, can he?
Absolutely, eviction.
Okay.
But
That's what I'm asking is do we have the same right? We're owner of that property. Can we kick them off for, I'm saying for reason other than just camping out?
I'm gonna let Kathleen handle that one.
Okay.
Sure, I can jump in briefly. So the difference between the private home situation that you're describing and public property is essentially that Martin v. Boise decision that keeps coming up. That case dealt expressly with public property, so encampments that are on public parks or sidewalks or other places where the public can congregate. And it held that if you don't have suitable housing spaces available for homeless individuals, then it can be a violation of their constitutional rights to penalize them simply existing on public property. You don't have that same consideration when you're dealing with private property. And the other reason that it's easier to deal with these issues on private property is because our code makes it a violation of our development code to have blighted properties or nuisances that exist on private property. We have some of those same protections for public property, but we have more constitutional protections too.
And that protection applies whether it is, you can say that there's significant criminal activity there or not.
Well, the criminal activity can be addressed separately as a crime. I think the point behind the Martin v. Boise decision is that being homeless can't be criminalized. So the mere status of being homeless can't be criminalized. If homeless people are committing separate crimes, certainly theft, littering, whatever, those can be dealt with as crimes, just like you would punish the same conduct from a non-homeless individual. But when the conduct squarely concerns the status of being homeless, that's when you run into the constitutional problems.
And again, I'm sorry, and again, I don't have a problem if this was a homeless camp, somebody just finding a place to sleep. That's not what this is. These people are dangerous if they're busting indoors where people are home and their 11-year-old daughters are in the front yard. This is a problem. And we should probably figure out something soon. I mean, not wait a week or two or a month until somebody gets hurt. Sounds like it's escalating to me.
Kind of another technical question, sorry, quiz the lawyer time. So the water, are they within the confines of whatever would be considered the water tower? So they're not within the critical infrastructure, city critical infrastructure, or anything like that?
No, the water tower is fenced off with barbed wire and
They're
those
not
kind of
within
things. They're not, we saw minimal evidence that they were within that. There's no tents or anything like that.
And I would assume legally, though, if they were within that, we have the legal right to remove them from that critical area because of the infrastructure.
Yeah, that's not the same as a public park or a sidewalk where the public is invited to gather. That's public property, but it's designated for a utility purpose and the public is intentionally kept out.
Understood. And second part, if I may, the unsafe conditions. So if the conditions that are created as a result of the encampment are deemed unsafe to the general public, reasonably unsafe to the general public, I'm not talking about necessarily criminal activities, I'm talking about whatever structures that get erected and people may be walking by if it were to fall and collapse or, and then potentially injure just an innocent person walking through the area. Do we have the legal right to remove that structure from the premises?
Generally, yes, I think you have to be a bit careful because you can run into the Fourth Amendment with search and seizure if you go removing property. But yes, you have a right to abate public nuisances. So if you have a situation that is causing an active danger that goes beyond just the fact that there are homeless people camping, then yeah, you can address that as a nuisance.
Thank you.
Is that watershed property or regular city property?
It's a water asset.
Does that make a difference?
Okay. Well, I've heard from our city manager and our police chief that they will be working on this and get something to the council and to the residents. So, anything else on this topic?
Is it? Mike wants to speak on this issue.
Public comment on this?
We're done with public comment tonight, Mike.
Well, yeah, it's up to the agenda though, so wasn't given the opportunity.
Not an action item, though.
It's not an action item. So if, it's up to the council.
I'll be happy to talk with you after the meeting. Okay? I'm sure a lot of our council will. Okay? Okay.
Is there a way we can get a timeline, maybe a study session set up for this, or?
So this just, Chief Moody and I will sit down tomorrow morning and we will devise a plan of action along with the department owner of the property and our community development and see what we can do specifically for this instance. There are some constraints, not things that Kathleen was talking about, but as far as precedent, because as was mentioned, if this happens here, it's just going to move somewhere else in the city. So we want to be cognizant of that as well. But we will come up with a plan of action tomorrow. I will communicate with all the council tomorrow afternoon about what direction we're going to go.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Anything else? Okay, any other items we want to bring up tonight for further discussion? Okay, thank you, Eric.
Thanks.
Seeing none, our next meeting is October 1st at 6 p.m. We're adjourned.
Talk more night here.